As some other speakers also said, I really wish them well. I hope they achieve the ambitious targets that they have set for themselves. I'm unfortunately a Makalaya product. I mean, in the sense that all the Indian education system has had its effect on me. I am not very well informed about our tradition. I'm not very well informed about a lot of things that I would think today's kids should be aware of. So in some sense, I'm going to speak on some things that I've been thinking more recently, and I look back and I would have liked to have greater exposure to these things in my school or later in education. I'm going to talk largely about the way I see management education or management research operating in India. I don't have the privilege of what is happening in the medical field, where pluralism exists. In management today, there seems to be no pluralism, and that's the problem for me. I would like to see management education in a pluralistic form. Since Ayurveda has managed to, or Unani or whatever, have all very strong traditions, and there have been practitioners of those traditions that have held on to their knowledge, and today, given an opportunity, can participate quite well, which is getting reflected in the way people are seeking health services. Or in management, we are not that lucky. Right now, there seems to be one paradigm, largely a paradigm originating out of the US, and there are huge arms, be it the World Bank, be it the IMF, be it educational institutions, and my institution is also part of a larger set of agencies that are propagating one paradigm. It gives me an opportunity to reflect on whether we are on the right path or not. Okay. In fact, Professor Sangal did talk about the second level of our development when he talked about economics. We went through from 50s. We went through a phase which lasted till the early 90s, which was heavily driven by what I would call the Soviet model of economic progress. It was at that time, one would think, the most established for developing countries, and rightfully whatever the leaders in the country followed that path without paying attention to its applicability to the Indian context. When it didn't work, they called the slow progress as the Hindu rate of growth. So when an alien paradigm doesn't work here, you kind of use a pejorative term to say something's wrong with you. That's why we've not. Anyway, somewhere around the early 90s, we've gone to a very, very American model of what progress is, and we push that, and we still seem to be pushing that agenda. Unfortunately, I think, as Professor Sangal said, that era is coming to an end. It's not coming to an end just in India. Globally, all the disturbances that you see. If you just see last week, there was a meeting in Davos, which is an annual affair. People are questioning for the globe whether the management models being followed for the world are right or wrong. Coming back more to the part that I've given you a written document, which is in the pamphlet given to you. If I look at how do paradigms get selected in terms of informing society and getting accepted in larger society, there are a whole range of criteria that are used. I'm going to focus on three criteria. The one is correspondence. So in some sense, the theory or the paradigm that you adopt should correspond to some phenomena that you can observe outside. So if I am talking about inflation, people in outside society should be able to relate to that term and actually can experience inflations in some way. So it's important for a paradigm that informs society have some correspondence with the experiences of the people. Another criteria that is used to select a paradigm is consistency with existing knowledge. So in some sense, there's a lot of inefficiency in knowledge creation and generation if for everything we have multiple theories. Okay, so at some stage in terms of efficiency of knowledge creation, consistency with an existing body of knowledge is important. Okay, and that's another criteria. Was set up in the early 60s. So there's IIM Ahmedabad, because of its parentage with Harvard Business, pushed a very practice-oriented research agenda. And that practice-oriented research agenda was kind of valid at that time. We had no managerial talent. A lot of industries in the Indian context really needed management talent to actually establish themselves and grow. And so IIM Ahmedabad, quite rightly, given its timing, focused on a very practice-oriented research paradigm. Unfortunately, the effort that would require to make sure that the research had some correspondence value with the context within they were working was neglected. And also in terms of creating consistency, in terms of rigor of research methods, etc., that we adapt to a whole paradigm that broadly can be sort of provide cumulative knowledge. That didn't happen. That thread still exists today. Unfortunately, it's being questioned in terms of its validity, and we are being pushed to do new modes of research which are acceptable at global standards. So the Ahmedabad model actually has a lot of practice value, but does not meet the criteria for global standards. The second institution, which was established a day apart, IIM Calcutta, given its parentage with MIT Sloan, they brought their own notion of what research is, and they pushed what is called a very positivistic research model. They draw heavily on physics. I mean, so MIT has its model of what knowledge is. They drive rigor. They drive very mathematical thinking. A lot of them have been very successful in what we call the natural sciences, and they have been force-fitted into the social sciences. They're not really working in the social sciences, but given their success in the natural sciences, it is deemed sort of social sciences should benefit from them. And if you see our colleagues at IIM Calcutta, a lot of them have developed a very big reputation in the global world, and so their work fits into global standards much better than the other institutions. And unfortunately, what that has done is it has helped individual researchers create a name for themselves, but it has not involved, that research has very little correspondence with our context we face in India, and it has also not been able to inform practice because it is knowledge for knowledge's sake. Articles get published in journals, reputed journals, scholars know each other, they cite each other, but just below the lamp there is darkness, because that research has very little to do with our context. The third stream, unfortunately, IMB was founded 10 years later, and we were supposed to bring a little bit of relevance back to the system, and our institution was supposed to, at one level, deal with public sector organizations, with both IIM Calcutta and IIM Ahmedabad were not paying attention to, and also try to do something which draws on our traditions. And if you have heard Professor Ramaswamy, our founder director. He's very, very involved with traditional thing. And in fact, one of his big projects was to develop a bullock cart that would be more efficient. Now, I think there was an emotional attachment to the fact that, okay, the villagers need a bullock cart, etc., etc. But in some sense, as the world has moved, I think the relevance of a bullock cart and spending time research and making the bullock cart more efficient has its limits. And it's time that we don't necessarily hang on to tradition for tradition's sake, but see the contemporary value of that tradition. And if it is not, we should be quite comfortable discarding it and moving on and applying our thoughts to newer things. Draw on tradition, but do new things. And again, hats off to people in Ayurveda who have been successful in drawing on tradition and yet contemporarizing the outputs that is relevant to us. Okay. So in some sense, that's the three streams of management education. They're not talking to each other, and as a result of it, we are not a very strong position in terms of saying that our research can be of value to India. Or really get us into the league where people out in the world will listen to us. And it's quite, if you look at big Indian companies, when they look at colleagues to put on their boards or consultants to advise, I mean, they're not coming to us. They're going elsewhere, because I think we've not done a good job creating a body of knowledge that can actually help them. Okay. Now, what are the implications of this for school education, primary education, which for me, middle class India has grown up, and our generation has grown up in a little bit of deprivation. So we are so obsessed that our children go to school that at the end of it they get a job. Okay, so there's a very job-oriented education that happens. So he talked about how physics is taught or whatever. I mean, the middle class India is obsessed with getting their child into education so that they get a job. So you might be good in humanities, I'll put you into physics and maths because you're a smart student, you'll do engineering, you get a job, and after that do whatever you want. Okay, so you have cricketers who are engineers, you have singers who are engineers, all because their parents told them that you need a job, you can follow your talent elsewhere. I think it's time now that kids be allowed to do what they can do and sort of get an appreciation for more holistic and integrated knowledge, such that they make the right choices. I mean, and they get out the right talent and the right aspirations, not be constrained by other things. Okay. The second thing is sort of related to what I said about the IMC brand of research, is knowledge for knowledge's sake. I mean, we are so obsessed with sort of esoteric mathematics, and we are never asked, is this going to be relevant for you elsewhere? I mean, if you are a pure mathematician, it's wonderful to doing all those esoteric maths, and hats off to those guys who fancy that and do it. But why is the rest of the world who is going to do other things also forced to do those things? And it's knowledge for just knowledge's sake. I think at some stage we have to bring back correspondence with reality and practical issues, and that balance has to come in. And the last issue is, I think, and I hope Purna Pramati will be successful in that. Ever since I started thinking about our tradition and trying to go back and accessing tradition and reading it, I found very poor material in terms of helping me as an adult who has kind of no Sanskrit background to go and access some of these things. So I am an example of a person who is today interested in knowing about some of the traditional things, but I don't have good simple access. I mean, it's I think if some people could work on that, and I think the Purna Pramati should be able to address those issues, sort of make some of our traditional knowledge more contemporary, such that a school kid can relate to it. I can see my kids, given my perspective, I would think that they would take to tradition better. Unfortunately, I'm not being successful because One, as I said, a Macaulay product, so I'm not very well versed with the tradition myself. And if I try to source material or information or whatever else that can get my kids to relate to it, we're not getting access to it. So in some sense, get our school education away from an extreme job orientation, just make knowledge that is delivered to them more relevant, and make some of our traditional knowledge more accessible to them. And I think these are the three broad things that Purna Pramati is going to do. I think they're essential, not just for the small number of people that this school that they are running will be able to reach. I think there is a need for this to get more integrated into a larger education system and create a larger reach to a broader set of people. Okay, thank you.
Ask Professor Navjyoti Singh now.